Recording. Hi, Dr. Barb.
Hey, Laura, how are you? Good morning.
I'm I'm great. I'm excited. This is our first Teen Leadership Academy live session. So that's pretty exciting.
This is very exciting. And, we had, Laura and I had such a great summer because we had this phenomenal teen leadership camp and worked with kids from all around the country. And it helped us realize what a need there is for kids, especially to really learn about great leadership skills and improve their abilities to lead and get into projects where they're leaders. And so we have just had so much fun these last few months developing some wonderful programming that we're going to have available for teens. And today is one of those live events that we wanted to do for you.
Yeah, we were really excited. We got some great feedback about some of the things that parents saw in their kids after attending. And we thought, what a great way to integrate some of the things that we taught the students or taught the attendees into what parents can do to help their kids become better leaders. And the other thing is, when we talk about leadership and we talk about ways that the kids can become better leaders now, those things that we teach them, those things that they're learning, are things that carry over not just in leadership specific situations, but they also tie into things like how they study, how do they prepare to get into college, how do they just act in general when they're around peers and they're around adults. So I think there's some great tie-ins to that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I had told Laura, I'm part of a foundation, a nonprofit foundation, and we did a garden project. And we had the most amazing group of Cub Scouts that were all girls that came out, and they told me about leadership stuff they were doing through the Scouts, but they said, anything leadership you guys do, we would love to be part of it. And these kids, man, they just took charge and went after it. And I just thought, oh my gosh, these kids, they just need some nurturing and guidance and some more skills in leadership, and they're our future, so we really need to put some more time and energy into them. And so we're really excited to launch into some fun leadership stuff this fall.
Absolutely. So before we actually get started, let's tell them how we got started with the Teen Leadership Academy. Dr. Barb and I have both done a lot of work with kids over the years and adults in the areas of development of leadership skills, study skills. We've done all different kinds of coaching, and we actually met as coworkers, as remote coworkers. I always forget how many years ago.
Yeah, like 10 years ago, I think.
But let's just say 8 years ago.
Yeah.
It was about that actually.
Yeah.
And we've just over the years developed a stronger relationship and have really been excited about working on some projects together. And again, like Dr. Barb said, we've seen this need, for kids to get more opportunities for developing their leadership skills. So we thought, let's launch the Teen Leadership Academy. But again, I'm Laura, and my background is in education. I taught for 10 years in the high school classroom, and then I moved on to doing faculty development work at a college. Did that for several years, and eventually my most recent role was development of programs for workers in a hospital. I was the education manager. So again, I've worked with students, really students in all age groups. When I did teach in college for a while, and the oldest student there was 77 when he took my class. So I've hit a wide range of students across the years. And Dr. Barb, we met doing the same thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And similar to Laura, but in a little different trajectory. I've worked with kids for years as a therapist. And so I've done a lot of emotional mental health work with kids and their families. And then I got into doing a lot of work with divorcing families and kids. So I still do a lot of that work, but wove my way also into leadership. And again, that love, I haven't worked with teens a lot recently up until camp this past summer. So I was just dying to get back to working with kids and totally love. I mean, I was so energized every day at camp, even though we were all exhausted by the end of the day. It was so exhilarating just working with the kids and hearing their ideas and things, ways they want to change the world. Literally, it was, so incredible. So, now we're back in this teen world, which I'm loving it. And I think the Teen Leadership Academy, we have some really cool things that we can help your teenagers with, and help them find their superpowers, which is what it's all about.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we wanted to do is hopefully over the next several weeks and months, we can offer support to parents, because we know that you're always looking for tools to help your kids out. And we thought one of the best ways we can help you is to perhaps give you some ideas of communicating better with your kids, and how you can kind of model this and help your kids to really advance their skills in communication. And you'll find there's so much connected to communication. There's the oral communication, there's the written communication. We get a lot into listening skills, because I think we all could use use some more help and become better listeners. So what we were actually going to do is focus on 5 simple strategies to help your teenager become a better communicator. And more specifically, we want to get into one of the 5 that we're going to mention in a minute and spend some time on that. And then we'll follow up with the other 4 at a later time. So the first of the 5 of them that we are specifically getting into are, we've got giving clear, concise, detailed directions, asking clarifying questions, creating written communication and making sure that you're aware of the implied and intended tone, creating a plan, and the last one is following up. So today we're going to focus on giving the clear, concise, detailed directions.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to start with that one. There's lots of stuff we can talk about. My gosh. Clear, concise, detailed directions. This is one of my favorites. Oh, my little doggy just walked in. That's Lady Dog. Fun of Zoom meetings, right? Is your animals join in, or children. So why is this important? Why do we talk about being clear and concise in our communications? And in all the work that Laura's done and that I do, whenever we see people in conflict too, the root of it tends to be communication stuff. We're not clear enough. We think we know what we're saying, or we think they understand what we're saying when we're talking to somebody else, but they don't, right? And it's probably because we haven't been clear and been specific or concise in our communication to that person. And, teenagers, obviously you get a lot of, how was your day? It was fine. And then they walk through the house and off to their room, right? So that's not unusual, but you kind of want a little bit more substance, right? So kids sometimes get in that mode with their parents, but a lot of these steps, like I said, that we'll go in depth with another time, help you really build that engagement with your kids, which is important. So one of the things that's really helpful as well is modeling the behavior. And, again, we tend to be a little too general and not specific enough with what we want. And with teenagers, I think it's really helpful to have specific things in mind. And, the best example I can think of, because I've worked with parents around this one, that's why it popped into my brain, is the example of cleaning your room. And I'm sure every parent has said to their teenager at one time or another, go clean your room. And when you go check their room after they've had time to clean it up, you might have a kid that's actually really organized and does like to clean their room, and you go and you say, wow, that looks so much better. Or B, you might walk in and say, oh my gosh, did you even touch anything in your room? It looks exactly the same. Or the clothes are still all over the floor, or whatever, right? It could be like a shocker in that nothing really looks any different. So it's really important to, model the behavior and to make sure that you're explaining and breaking it down in really clear steps. So what does it mean to clean your room? Instead of like, go clean your room, well, that could be picking your clothes up off the floor and putting them in your hamper. You've got like toys all over the floor. Let's put them in your toy drawer or your toy box or whatever, depending on how old the kids are. And teenagers have toys and stuff all over their rooms too. So, or it could be, you know, you've got books strewn everywhere, or food, plates of food. If your kids have snuck food into their rooms, you know, there might be like remnants of wrappers and, you know, bottles of water or whatever. And so all of that stuff, sometimes you just have to lay it out in clear steps. And so modeling the behavior is really important for you as a parent all the time anyway. But in this situation too, to actually like go around the room with your kid and say, here's examples of what I mean. So, you know, we've got clothes on the floor. Let's pick those up. Let's put them in the hamper, you know, and we've got a bunch of plates of food or whatever. We're going to just like set them next to the door. And as we leave the room, we're going to take those and take them down to the kitchen, but actually doing the behavior as well and having this conversation with the kids. So I like the idea too of involving the kids in this process. So, and oftentimes I'll say, you know, well, what do you think cleaning your room means? You know, what does that look like? And sometimes they'll come up with stuff like, oh, maybe I should dust my blinds. And, you know, they'll come up with things that you hadn't even thought about, but they might come up with some additional things. And some kids like visuals. So I know Laura and I are both visual. We like lists or little, you know, things we can put up on the wall as reminders. And so sometimes with kids, it's helpful to say, clean your room means these 6 things. And you and I have talked about them together. We've identified them together. I've shown you what that looks like or what I expect. And then there's a little bit better outcome. Laura, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, well, actually, one of the first things that you were mentioning about, doing the room and what does that look like? It just reminded me of when I was a kid. It would be, you know, the first thing I would say is, yeah, I'm done. Of course I cleaned it, you know? And my impression of what done meant was completely different than what mom and dad thought done meant, you know? And a lot of times, and, you know, just to tie it into some of the academic stuff, a lot of kids have a really hard time with the first test that they take with the new teacher, because the teacher could say, oh, you know, you got your first test coming up, but you don't know specifically, what does that test look like? Like, what if, you know, I'm really nervous, I'm not sure. And you may have some expectations built up in your head, and then you go in and it's completely different. The same thing, like if you are told, hey, you've got to do this project, I need you to go home and, you know, do a family tree. Well, if the teacher doesn't come out and say, here are the things that I'm looking for when you come back, and a lot of times you'll hear the term rubric being used. So those are the specific things that you want to hit in order to make sure you've completed everything you're supposed to. If that's not there, it's so easy to come in and here's my tree with 1 branch. Do I get credit? You know, versus having gone into a lot more detail, showing all of the steps that went into it. And again, it's the same thing. If you say, clean your room, and then, you know, someone could say to me, clean my room, and I could spend an hour going through the closet, organizing the closet. And if mom or dad would come in and open up my room and see nothing got done, I could say, well, I worked on it for an hour, but they didn't know it was just in the closet. So, you know, so that's why you got to be as specific as you possibly can be. And it might sound like kind of a silly example, but it's really, again, a lot of times it's not that the kid is trying to cut corners or deceive you, but at the stage that they're at, their brain does not necessarily look and see what that final picture should be.
Yep.
So again, my room looks great. I don't know what you're talking about. And anyone that's seen my office before, I would be proud that, like, hey, I've cleaned my office. And, you know, for me, that meant I have 3 piles instead of 8, you know, whereas other people I've worked with are like, I can't handle the clutter. So again, different expectations of what that looks like.
Yeah. And I think, again, involving your kid, your teenager in this is so powerful, because it's interesting, even just all the work that I did as a therapist working with kids, where we talk about, you know, punishment, for example, like, you know, what if you do something you're not supposed to do? What should happen to you? You know, like, what should mom and dad do? Should they like put you in your room for a couple hours? Should you not have dinner? Should you whatever? And man, the kids would come up with these harsh punishments that were way worse than what a parent would probably do. I don't know where they get this stuff, if it's they're, you know, reading it in books or watching it in movies or something, like these completely harsh punishments. But involving the kids in those decisions around, you know, here's, if I do this, or if I come home late after curfew, like with a teenager, if I come home late, here's what should happen. You know, maybe I lose my phone for the next day, or I can't have the car keys for 3 days, or whatever, but involve them in that, because that gives them some power in it too. So then when things do fall apart, you can say, remember, we talked about this together and you had decided this would be a great thing. Just like the cleaning your room, like, remember, we had these 6 things on the list that you were going to do for cleaning your room. So, you know, how can I help you? Like, how can I, you know, maybe we need to revisit this, or let's talk about, like, what are some ways, and why is this important? Like, why is having a clean room important, or a clean space? How can that help you? I think is really important for teens to understand too. And again, I know kids that, like, everything is in perfect order in their bedrooms. Like, they're just organizer kids, you know, everything is like lined out on their shelves. Like, there's just kids that are like that too, but they may have other things that they need support around that, you know, again, might need those steps outlined. So,
Absolutely. And the idea behind, you know, organizing and giving these specific instructions, there's 2 parts to that I want to mention. One is, as your teenager grows and becomes a better leader, you know, they're going to want to be able to, let's say they're a captain of a team, you know, they want to be really specific. Hey, we're going to go stretch. Okay, well, that's great, but they go over there and they walk them through the stretch. You don't just say, hey, go do this. It's very specific routine that they have set up. And even if the captain has to go do something else, like just using a softball example, okay, well, we have to go to the plate over by home plate now, and you know, with the coach, and hand out our lineup to the umpires and all this kind of stuff. So you give your team something else to do. It's like, you know, hey, go play catch for 5 minutes. You know, it's like, just, if you want things to kind of look organized and you want things to kind of run smoothly, you're pretty specific with what you want people to do. You know, and the same thing, like if they want to run for class council and they are in charge of a meeting, it's really important that they give details, not just, hey, come to this meeting, and then it's just chaos when they get there because they haven't done any, you know, planning and given specific instructions. So that's one of the things, like if it's specific to leadership. But like I said before, a lot of the leadership things that they learn tie into their academic work. So I think we all know that taking notes that are clear and concise and organized usually work out a lot better than those notes when you're like, wait, was this from biology class? Oh, wait, no, I also have my history notes in here too. So like, if you're not organized, it's really hard to go back and find things. You know, and it's the organization part I know we keep talking about, but you know, the organization makes me think of, okay, you have X, Y, and Z things that you need to accomplish, but that's also the same thing. Like if you're putting down what the homework assignment is, you know, you don't just put the page down, you put down all the details of what the teacher wants you to do. It's kind of a weird time now with so many people being online. It's a little different, you know. A lot of the stuff is already spelled out for them, like, you know, just go to this page and look up the assignment. But when they're live and learning this stuff, it's really great to get them to, you know, again, follow those instructions, and then think about, if they were in charge of something, how would they give those instructions? So, so Dr. Barb, if you don't mind, maybe we could do a kind of a practice one here. I'll do with you, because, you know, parents, like, the best thing to do is come up with something that's specific to your kid. That's something that you want them to do. So, Dr. Barb, I would love for you to wash my car this weekend. So, I'm going to give you instructions, and those will be, hey, go wash my car and let me know when you're done. How's that?
Okay. Well, that, you know what you might end up with then, right? You might have
exactly like
so
yeah, scratched paint because, you know, you sprayed the glass cleaner and used it for the whole car.
Yep.
But you could say, what I'd like you to do is wash the car this weekend, and before we start doing that, can you tell me what things you think you want to do to make the car clean? So Dr. Barb, what kind of things do you think we should do to make sure the car's clean?
Well, I think of the inside's kind of messy. Like we probably need to do some vacuuming on the inside. And I know because of the dogs, there's like nose prints on the inside of the windows. So we probably have to wash the windows on the inside. And then the outside is just really dusty. So we're going to have to like get soap and water with a sponge and just really clean the outside really well too. So it's going to be probably like a little bit on the inside and a little bit on the outside.
Oh, well, you know what? You didn't mention waxing, but my assumption was that you were going to wax the car.
That's a lot of work.
So that's why I'm glad we're talking about this. But now, once we've gone through and we've talked about that together, I can say, okay, what I'd like you to do is by Sunday afternoon, I would like you to have washed the car. And that means you're going to vacuum the inside, wash the windows, inside and outside. You're going to use the cleaner that we have in the garage, and you're going to use the hose. The instructions are right on the cleaner. You know what to do. And then once you dry it off, there's some polish in there. The instructions are right on the polish container. So I want you to go ahead and finish that. And then when you're done with that, let me know, because that means you've done the car.
Yeah. Ooh, my arm's tired just thinking about it.
Wax on, wax off.
All of that? I was just gonna like spray it off with a hose.
And there's going to be kids that don't require as specific as of instructions. You're going to have some that are, and I hate to even say mature, because some things are just related to experience versus them being able to, kind of figure things out. But every kid's different. Your kids. So it's like, we can give you just some guidance and say, these are some things that we suggest, but how much detail they need. When I think about, I taught special ed for several years, and there were very specific things that I needed to tell certain students because they had to have things broken down into really, really specific details. And then I've had other students who I'm like, well, you know what, why don't you go ahead and teach the class for me? Because evidently you know more, you're more organized in this than I am. So you have different levels there. But some of the key things are, again, like the more of the discussion that you can have to figure out together what those outcomes will look like, the better successes that you're going to have. And again, it's that being really precise and, being really concise with your language too. And then something we haven't mentioned yet, but really one of the best parts about doing this is the great job at the end, like the praise at the end for even just the steps along the way. Like you might have a kid that didn't get the whole thing completed perfectly, but hey, you did a great job with the first 3 steps. So maybe together we could do the windows, so we know how to do it right next time.
Yep.
But then at the end, you did a great job. Then you can, for fun, you can say, okay, I want you to give me instructions on something like making dinner. What are the steps that you want me to take to make dinner? You want me to watch something with you? Like, what are the instructions? What are you going to give me as instructions to make sure I record the right thing on TV for us? So there's lots of ways that you can kind of turn that around. But and a lot of times it's just, it can be fun, but I know there's going to be kids who aren't used to it. So sometimes you just have to, finagle things a little bit to keep the interest. And again, that's why every kid's going to be a little different, but again, that communication piece is so critical, because that's going to carry over to everything that they do.
Yeah. Yep. I love it. That's awesome. So I wonder if we should talk about, how do you help? What do you think?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So for you parents out there, think about what are some things like, and again, these were examples, kind of some, regular household things, but what are some examples that you could think of that you would like your teenager to do? I think it's also important to think about, how do you typically tell your teenager to do these things? Again, is it go clean your room? Is that typically what you've been doing? Or are you already a little bit more specific and clear with your communication? So just, a lot of parenting too is kind of self-assessment, right? And that's what we teach our leaders and our teenagers is around just like kind of being aware of your own stuff, right? So, how maybe I wasn't really clear in how I communicated clean your room to my child. So think about those types of things. Like, what are some things that you would that you'd like your teen to do, and what would you like the outcome to look like? And again, that's like, I love Laura's example of like, well, I spent an hour cleaning my closet, and then you like shut your closet door, and your parents walk in, and you're like, oh my gosh, you didn't do anything. It looks exactly the same, but I cleaned for an hour. So, you want to be clear on the outcome. I'd like for the car, I'd like it to be free of all the stones and the grit and the garbage inside the car. And after you vacuum, I want the windows to be sparkly and get the nose prints from the dogs off the windows. And and then it should be nice, when it's all finished, a nice little shiny polish on it that's consistent and clean and all that. So, be clear on what you want it to look like at the end. And how do you make it clear to your child? So to your teenager, how do you relay that? Again, it's kind of all these things we've talked about, like just breaking things down in really small steps. And for some kids, again, once is enough. Some kids, they might need to hear it more than once, right? And that's okay too. Again, if you got lots of steps, if you got 6 steps or 10 steps, they might say, well, I can't remember all that. Okay, well, we'll write it down, or let's just walk through it again so that you have a little refresher before we do that again. And talk to your kids about what they would like to see. Like, how would you like your room to look? What could we do different over here that would make, maybe your desk area where you're doing homework is, a little bit crazy messy. So would it be helpful, and how might it be helpful to have your desk cleaned up? Like, what would that look like? And involve the kids in that piece as well.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, anytime they get involved, I remember it was a lot more effective at the beginning of the school year when we would have the kids together decide what the classroom rules or guidelines would be versus, hey, here's 10 things you have to do. When they have ownership, it just makes such a big difference. So that's a really big piece. So there's a lot of things that actually go into just this one of the 5 things that we had talked about as being 5 important communication skills that you can help them develop. And even specific to this one, as Dr. Barb mentioned earlier, we're both visual learners. We've got some other tips that we will be really glad to send you about how can you make this more visual using something as simple as Post-it notes with the different steps. There's other ways of, hey, they're going to do this in the room. You can put Post-its in the areas that you want them to work on. Things like, how can we take the steps of, how can we take 20 steps and not make it sound so intimidating? How can we break this down into something more of that information? So what we'd love for you to do, if you would like to get some more information, is write on the Facebook page itself to basically get added to the list so that we can send this information to you. So we'll send you the PDF that's got these 5 strategies that you can use. It's got this one that we talked about, and then details on the other 4. So if you want to go ahead and click that would be fantastic. It's going to show, it's going to possibly show on there when you click that you can also get the schedule to some of the things that we're going to be teaching coming up. So that's something also that you can access by clicking on that link.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And this, I've been doing some of my last Zoom and Facebook things outside. It's been so beautiful. And then today it's 30. And so I'm like, what am I going to do today outside? Nothing. So now I'm like, when we mentioned washing the car, it sounded like a great idea. And then I just realized, wait a second, there's a reason I'm sitting inside today, because it's 30 degrees out. So I'm excited to have a weekend coming up, and and for the weekend, you can certainly come up with an idea with your kid on what to do. Hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z this weekend, talk through it, and here's the steps. There's just a lot of stuff with communication. So again, if you join the list, we'll send a lot of this stuff to you.
That sounds great. Yeah. So, and the other thing is, always feel free to share. If there's something that we post that you like, share it with your friends who have teenagers. And let's just kind of spread the love, if you will, because again, we really see a need for working with teens and really helping them develop these great leadership skills early on. And again, communication, if kids can master that at their ages, they can turn into adults that know how to have good, clear communication, and they know how to deal with conflict or problem solve or make good decisions because they've learned how to communicate. So communication is just, again, it's the root of so many things that we see. When things have fallen apart, it always goes back to communication. So the earlier that we can get to these kids, the better. So we're excited to have you here today, and please share the love, spread the love, and hopefully we'll see your kiddos in one of our programs.
Absolutely. So thanks for joining us, Dr. Barb. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
And we'll hopefully see each other soon.
Sounds
Have
great.
a great weekend, everybody.